Well, welcome everyone. Your presence here today validates your love for Andrew and also validates your love for each other as we come together to grieve as a community. And speaking of that, we still have people come in, and so your grieving will be easier if you all kind of scooch together and make some room for everybody. My name is Dave, and I was privileged to lead a small house church for Andrew. We had moved through several house churches as we began our journey here at the Stirring. And as they grew and disbanded and grew and disbanded, as is normal as house churches grow and change, we found ourselves in a position where when one of them ended, we got together as a group, a small group, Andrew was one of those people, and decided to get together for dinner. And we did it the next week, and the next week, and the week after that, and so forth, and so on, and finally realized we had found another house church. And as we continued, it just kept going and wouldn't stop. And so most house churches take a summer off or a break, and we didn't. We kept going and eating and growing and going. But Andrew was such a wonderful part of our house church. And my name is Dave. I don't know if I said that, but my wife Sherry and I, we're pleased to host that house church. And by way of introduction, we call this a celebration of Thanksgiving because we do celebrate Andrew's life, and we're thankful that we all got to be a part of that. And so we welcome you here today. I'd like to preface my prayer. I want to kick us off with a prayer today with just a short story because we all have stories of Andrew's life, and that is why we are here. We love him very much. And I used present tense. Did you guys catch that? Thank you. Let me say it again. Did you guys all catch that? Man, you guys, this sounds like a funeral or something. Anyway, so there's a story about Benjamin Disraeli and William Gladstone. You guys heard of them? 3 people. Okay, I'm a nerd. My wife says I go blah, 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 and some of my friends do too. Gladstone and Disraeli were some of the most important statesmen that Great Britain ever had, and a woman was invited to attend a state dinner with those 2 men. And at the end of the evening, someone said, "What was it like talking to Gladstone?" And she said, "I felt I was in the presence with the most important man in the entire world." What about Disraeli? She said, "He made me feel that I was the most important person in the entire world." One day, Andrew borrowed my truck, and I have made a mixtape, a CD with a bunch of random songs on it. Groups like Passion Pit, Empire of the Sun, some other groups like that. And of course, Deep Purple, Pink Floyd, right, Marty? Yeah. Thanks, man. And Andrew was amazed. He said, "Dave, this classic rock is incredible." And I spouted off some obscure factoid, like, "Did you know, Andrew, that the band Boston," how many of you have heard of Boston? Yep, 17 of you. This is a really young crowd. But then I'm twice as old as Andrew. So I said, "Did you know, Andrew, that the band Boston was credited? Some critics believe that they actually stemmed the tide of disco that was sweeping America." He was amazed. We made a pact that day that I would tutor him in the rituals of classic rock. Well, that never happened. Many of you have unfinished things that didn't happen because of Andrew's leaving us. But the thing is that if Andrew wrote a book, all of you are chapters in that book. Because all of you, he loved. He loved you, Rachel. He loved you, Nate. Well, he liked you a lot. I know that for a fact. Marty the Third, he adored you. My wife, Sherry, he loved you. Sherry called him son Again, I'm twice Andrew's age, but he was more like a brother. Chad, he loved you. Jenna, he loved you most of all. I just want to pinch your cheeks right now. But you were the most important person in his entire life. And you know, I'm going to start crying. No, I'm not. I got this. But I just want to let you know, even though I'm older than your dad, hi Tom, I want to let you know that you can call me or text me anytime for the rest of your life. Chad, that goes for you as well. But the most important person in Andrew's life was, of course, Jesus. And that's the most important person in our lives too. So it's time for me to pray. May I ask that you all stand with me? Let's invite Jesus here today and ask him to be our most honored guest. So Jesus, we come to you. We thank you so much for the life of Andrew Jackson. Lord, I'm reminded of your friend Lazarus who died. And the shortest verse in the entire Bible says Jesus wept. And I believe you wept when Andrew passed because death is not part of your plan. But Lord, you weep with us as we weep, as we grieve, even as we laugh and we cry. You are there for us. So we bring any form of our grieving to you today. Smart people say that there are stages and phases of grief. I'm not sure how that all works, but what we do is we bring all of that, lay it at your feet, and we thank you. Because knowing that you wept, we can weep too, and love you because you understand it all. So we invite you to be with us today. We thank you so much for your presence. And Lord, I just pray we have a little fun today. In your name, amen. Thank you. You may be seated.
Hi. I first met Andrew when he was a teenager, and I got to know him again when he was working for Jeremy in the Sound House. We worked on a lot of projects together, and Andrew frequently came out to mine and my husband's house when we lived out in Bella Vista and would spend time with us out there, and we'd talk about life and cats and girls, and just had a lot of fun. And one of my fondest memories of Andrew was when we were working on one of my projects, and Jeremy had a meeting and asked Andrew to step in and kind of run the vocal session. And I was kind of struggling on one line, and Andrew stopped the track, and he told me that I was singing it wrong and proceeded to sing to me how it should go. And to be perfectly honest with you, I'm not really used to somebody telling me how I should sing. And I admired him so much for that. And in that moment, I realized how much he had grown, not just in his skill in the studio, but in his confidence. And I was so amazed, suddenly realizing, wow, I've really watched Andrew over so many years grow into this incredible man that he is. And the last time that I saw Andrew on the worship team was actually here. I was a guest here, and I was standing right down here, and Andrew was on the stage playing bass. And I was moved to tears just watching him. He had so much passion coming out of him as he played. And it's one thing to play an instrument, but it's completely different to play that instrument well and to just worship your heart out. And that's exactly what he did. And I just feel very honored to have known Andrew. tragedy, you grieve with me. Your comfort is my song. In my wandering, you're still rescuing. You will never, never give up. You are on my side. You go before me. You stand behind. You tell my fear to run. Always and forever, I am loved. You are on my side. Oh, you are on my side. Oh, you were on my side. You were on my side. When I couldn't see, when I couldn't feel, when the pain was real, you were on my side. You were on my side. When you saved me from my heart of stone, you awoke these bones. You were on my side. You were on my side. Nothing on this earth could ever separate me from your love. You are on my side. You go before me. You stand behind. You tell my fear to run. Always and forever, I am loved. Oh, you are on my side. You go before me. You stand behind. You tell my fear to run. Always and forever, I am loved. You are on my side. Oh, you are on my side. Oh.
Hello, my name is Rachel. I am one of Andrew's twin sisters, and you will get the fine privilege of meeting my other half in a few minutes. The Corrado family has been woven in with the Jackson family for a long time. Chad has roomed with Andrew and been one of his best friends for years. And I was very excited when Andrew started dating Jenna. It made me happy. His soon-to-be fiance, our soon-to-be new daughter, new sister, we embrace that. When Andrew passed, I physically lost a brother, and I've gained a sister, and my heart feels that. At this time, I'm going to pass the mic over to Tom, Chad and Jenna's father. He's going to share a few words with you.
Good afternoon. I'm sure many of you probably share the same conflicted emotional feelings that I'm going through. On one hand, I absolutely hate the circumstances that have brought us here today at this time and place. And on the other hand, the opportunity to share in this blessing of sharing time, of honoring Andrew Meredith and the incredible young man that he was. Everything I've seen, heard, and read in the last few weeks has shown me that Andrew has left his fingerprints, long-lasting fingerprints, upon this world in ways that most people never have or never will. About 3 days after Andrew passed, I was laying in bed in the middle of the night, tossing and turning. I'm sure many of you can relate to that as well. I had so many thoughts going through my mind of things that I wanted to say to Andrew, but I couldn't. So I got up out of bed and I wrote Andrew a letter. And while I know Andrew's current mailing address, I have no way of getting this letter there. So I have to believe that Andrew can see and hear everything going on today. So I'm going to take a few minutes to read this letter so that I may say the words and so that Andrew may hear them. Andrew, you came into my family's life as Chad's friend in junior high school. Most parents are concerned about who their kids hang with, especially in junior high. Jamie and I learned very quickly that you were a good kid. We were grateful for Chad choosing such a good influence, and we took great comfort in knowing you two would not get into trouble. Your and Chad's friendship continued to grow through high school and into young adulthood as roommates, and we continued to be grateful for your positive influence. That being said, there was one area of your influence I was concerned about. With me being ultra-conservative, you eventually learned that I can't stand skinny jeans and man buns. And yet, despite what I thought, you were genuine and stayed true to yourself. I want to tell you, Andrew, I both respect and admire you for that. At the same time, it's been a little irritating that you made me face the fact that skinny jeans and man buns had to become acceptable. But only for you. So don't get any ideas, my son Chad. I realized later that you figured out long before I did that I liked you way more than I could ever dislike skinny jeans and man buns. I watched your and Chad's and eventually your and Jenna's friendship develop through the years, and I continued to say, he's a good kid. It was no surprise the day Jenna announced that you and her had become a thing. For us old people, this must be millennial speak for dating. It was also no surprise how fast your and Jenna's relationship progressed, realizing you had known each other for years. You two began this thing already having a very close relationship with each other. A few days before you left to go to London, I mentioned to a friend at work that my daughter was in a very serious relationship. He asked what most men ask at that point. Well, what do you think of the guy? Without hesitation, I looked him right in the eye and I responded, he's a great kid. And I realize that Andrew's a man as a footnote here, but when you're as old as I am, he's still a kid. The day after your passing, I was told you were coming to see me upon your return from your London trip. You were going to ask for my daughter's hand in marriage. This is something I don't see very often anymore, but obviously you knew this was important to me. I'm deeply saddened we did not get to have that conversation, Andrew, because you would have liked my answer. Not only was I going to say yes, but I was going to take the time to revel in that yes answer. You see, Andrew, I had a gut feeling this was coming. So while you were preparing the question, I was preparing my answer. I wanted to take the opportunity to explain my yes. I wanted you to know, in a father's heart, he wants to know the man truly loves his daughter, not just in word, but also in action. You did this exceedingly well. You strived to make her happy, but at the same time, I saw you keeping that in balance. A father wants to know his daughter will be well cared for. You showed you had the ability, and more importantly, the desire to do so. A father wants to know his daughters will be met, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. What I saw in you gave me great comfort. You had all these areas covered. A father wants a man who will fit in with his family. You most certainly did, despite our family being so crazy. A father wants to see his daughter in a marriage where two people not only live their life together, but also challenge each other to grow. I had already seen positive changes in Jenna's life that are a direct result of your challenges. A father wants a strong partner for his daughter, so when troubled waters come, and they always do, his daughter won't be trying to navigate those troubled waters by herself, but would have a partner there beside her. This too, you had covered. I wanted to tell you, Andrew, I had complete confidence that you were going to transition from a great kid to a great husband. I wanted to tell you that you had 100% support from both Jamie and me. I enjoyed watching you intentionally pursue your relationship with Jenna. In addition, I was so impressed with how you were being intentional about developing your relationship with me. Even though we might not have had a whole lot in common, you were clearly making efforts to express interest and desire to spend time with me. You were even willing to stretch beyond yourself, as evidenced by your planting the seed to maybe even going hunting with me. You didn't push it, you just planted a little seed of interest. I don't know if you saw the devilish grin on my face, as I immediately realized the gifts I was going to get for you for your next birthday. I have to find my spot here. There we go. I knew I could pull this off since you blended so well into our politically incorrect family where teasing and sarcasm are expressions of love. The first gift because while hunting you need to blend into your surroundings, you would need your very own pair of camouflage skinny jeans. Game you are pursuing, it's important to keep your hair out of your eyes. You would need a camouflage hat with a hole cut in the top for your little man bun to stick out. Andrew, I thank you for being the friend to Chad that brings great comfort to a parent. I thank you for loving my baby girl with a genuine love many marriages don't even glimpse. If you haven't picked up on it yet, Andrew, I would have been proud to call you son-in-law. I want you to know I will forever be grateful for those fingerprints that you left upon my family through the years. Until we meet again, I will not forget you.
So I get the fun opportunity to introduce the siblings today. And if we can get our picture up of the four of us, that would be fantastic if we have that. We are Andrew's siblings. And I had to realize that most of you in this room have probably never seen the four of us together, which is kind of funny because of how close we are knit at the heart. Many people throughout the last couple of weeks have just been surprised at how far apart we live, but how close we are. It was so evident as people were traipsing through our house, supporting and loving our family in the last weeks. Honestly, we are really darn good at being close. My siblings are some of the best things in my life, and I'm speaking on behalf of all four of us. I often say that if more people had great siblings in their lives, there'd be less people in jail. My hope is that you have some form of this type of love in your life, and if you don't, at some point you pursue it. It's very wonderful. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Alexander to share some stories about Andrew.
Hi. Andrew had a certain kind of charm. When he was in 6th grade, our parents drove to pick him up from a birthday party. Mom and Dad were late, so the other boys had all left the party by the time they arrived. But Andrew, they found sitting in a rocking chair, surrounded by the 6th grade girls, whose eyes were just glued to him as they hung on his words. He was just a cute kid. He and I were different in that way. I'm Alexander, Andrew's only brother, and I realize that puts me in a position to draw a unique portrait of his life. But he had 2 sisters as well, and we want you to see what it was like to grow up with Andrew. For one thing, he didn't really steer what we did. He just followed us into adventure and trouble alike. And yeah, sometimes it was him who put his foot down and went home and left us to our destructive shenanigans. But then he would go help Mom cook. Andrew didn't play by himself as a kid. He wanted to be where people were having fun. Andrew's grade school years were very difficult for our family, but they were also very good. He and I played in the irrigation ditches of Idaho farmland. We walked through the fields and threw at each other the potato halves they would use to seed the potato fields. So, sorry to any farmer whose potato crops we ruined. We tasted watercress out of the creek and decided we didn't like it. At the farmhouse we rented, there was a 10-foot wooden stand with some propane tanks on it, and we would jump off this structure to the gravel driveway below just for that brief thrill of the free fall. We played on rusty combines, we shot pigeons with pellet guns, we ate wheat grains straight out of the silos that stood tall behind our house. I don't remember the wheat tasting very good, but you know. Andrew is just as ready for wild adventure as he was for an afternoon of Legos. He was easy to get along with, as all of you know. We spent hours upon hours playing Legos, hours. And really, he was more of a giver than I was. So what does that look like in the Lego world? I would ask him for help finding some specialized piece or a hook or a minifigure or something like that, and he would drop whatever project he was working on to help me find it. It's fun to watch my sons sharing a similar relationship as they play with Legos their Uncle Andrew gave them.
So everyone knows that little brothers are super annoying, and like Alexander totally was. But Andrew wasn't. He was my sweet little shadow who followed me around, and when we were little, everyone said, he doesn't look like his parents, he looks like Renee. We were very similar in our approach to life, and aside from just losing a brother, I just lost one of my best friends. But one of my favorite Andrew stories is, it was a couple days before I was going out to college, and he comes into my bedroom, and he has this tape measure, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And he proceeds to go measure the wall, because he's like, well, I gotta figure out where I'm putting my dresser. And I was like, you couldn't wait 2 days for me to leave before you measured the room? I was so annoyed. So I come back, it's Christmas break, and I walk into my old bedroom, and he has on a shelf these dried roses that I had been part of a wedding and dried and kept in my room. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't take those out, you know. And he looks at me and he's like, Renee, I kept them because they remind me of you. And as like a, what was he at the time, 15, 16-year-old boy, he's just so sweet.
He was always so trusting, too, especially when he was young. Once, when I was 5 and he was 3, I told him to close his eyes and open his mouth. And so he did. And so I fed him and Daddy Longleg. Some things he had to learn the hard way. But what did Andrew teach us? He paid attention to the people immediately in front of him. Being with people was important to Andrew. It made him so happy. After he learned to talk, he still didn't talk very much. He would just sit there and smile, happy to be there. Back then, the girls called him Chi-Chi Face, which has a name having something to do with monkeys, you know, because of that wide, adorable smile that he had. And he didn't need to be the center of attention. He just wanted to be included. Andrew also cared so much. He let you be yourself and make your own decisions. And how many times did he throw his hands up and make that Andrew face and say, okay then. Yeah, okay. You all know that face. Unless you were doing something dumb, then if you were teachable, he would step in and save you from yourself. He cared so deeply about people's experiences and feelings. For instance, Andrew followed me the day that I ran away from home. I didn't get very far. I was 11, and I didn't realize how hard it would be to run away. But Andrew was 9, and he hated the thought that I might not come back. So as I tried biking along the dirt pack at the edge of an alfalfa field in Idaho, Andrew chased me on his own bike to tell me that I couldn't run away. He may have been telling me not to run away with Dad's nice winter gloves. But I own those gloves now, so the joke's on Andrew. But how many of you have had a similar experience? How many of you did he chase to make sure you didn't run away from your pain or from yourself? Instead, Andrew demonstrated what it means to be present to others, to acknowledge your own wounds, and to fight for your life on the road to peace.
Thanks, Alexander. Andrew was a very present kid, like we discussed. So I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to be present with you today. I wasn't sure what to say at the service today, but I just thought about how much he loved his friends. And he's a young man that passed away in his prime, and most of his friends are in their prime. This opportunity we have to look at our lives is very strong. Tony Robbins says that some people are never lucky enough to hit rock bottom. We have an opportunity to change the way that we live. I know I will. I will love deeper than I have ever loved before. Opportunities are like passion. They have to be cultivated. I would challenge you today to open yourself up to think differently because of Andrew's life and his death. Deep love is possible, but it is hard and it is messy sometimes. Mother Teresa says, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. Our families are the arenas where we grapple with the real world, real life. We cannot change the cards we're dealt, but we can control the hand and how we play them. Everyone has messy life cards. Andrew had messy life cards. Some of you know those cards. Some of you sat with him while he tried to figure out how to play his hand. My family has sought truth for years. We've grown. And so there's some nuggets that we've embraced. As siblings, we would call and just deal with the messy stuff together a lot. I want to share some of these nuggets with you in hopes that this opportunity that has shaken me and hopefully shaken you, that some of this truth can help you sort through and make your life better. Be vulnerable with the right people. Vulnerability breeds connection, and we all need that. Light your corner of the world. Andrew is such an example of this. No part of him went out and broadcasted his mission or bragged about what he did. No, he sat with you in Maxwell's and had a burger. And you talked about life, and it changed people. Dig into the messy. Go to counseling if you need to. Andrew was on a quest at some point in his life to figure out what it meant to be a man, and he made it. I am so grateful that I got to see him as a man. It's beautiful. If we would have lost him 5 or 10 years earlier, I don't know that we would be able to say that today. But he was a man. Marty. Listen to your heart, my friends. Ask yourself hard questions and try to find answers. Learn about yourself. Do the right thing. Sometimes it takes a lot of effort, but it pays off. It's worth it. I want you to know, as Andrew's sister, I know his heart. I know his heart like I know my heart. And he loved you so much. So much. And he wants you to know that. Before you think that we're this put-together family that can come up and speak in this vast tragedy, know that this grief is too big for us to absorb right now. I cannot fathom this loss. So please help me take care of my mama. Andrew did a lot of that. He did a lot of that. He was the youngest. He was a mama's boy. Completely a mama's boy. And this loss is going to ripple into parts of our lives that we haven't even realized yet. So my dad will speak in a bit, but I wanted to thank you for letting us share our beautiful, broken, and fully human family. Thank you.
Kind of thing, and have it just be an all in for now, then we can tweak it later. All right.
I'm gonna do my best here. I've spent almost every day with Andrew for the last 10 years, and I just want to honor him today. So I'll probably end up reading this a little bit. So I first met Andrew about 10 years ago. I was building a recording studio here in Reading, and I was up on a ladder, and Andrew walked in and got my attention, and I think I was putting up some drywall or something, and Andrew said, "Hey, man, are you looking for any interns?" And I was like, "You bet. Be here tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., and bring some work clothes." So he showed up the next morning at 9 a.m., ready to go, and I found out from Cheryl that he used to come home and brag about, "Jeremy let me crawl in the basement and run wire and all this stuff." I didn't know he liked that so much. After a few months of construction, Andrew was eager to start making music, and I realized really quickly that he didn't know anything about recording. And I used to tease him that the first thing I taught him was how to plug a microphone in. And he was always like, "That's probably true." At that time, we were getting busy, and I desperately needed help, so I started pouring everything I had into Andrew, and I found out quickly that he was super eager and motivated and excited and positive and ready to learn, and he was like a sponge, and everything I taught him, he put into practice, and within a few months, he was starting to do his own sessions and becoming a favorite of local bands, and assisting me on all my productions, and just absorbing everything along the way. Andrew ended up, he was actually my first hire at this recording studio I built in town. And he was my first intern, and he was my first hire. And we've had about 30 interns over the last 10 years. And I always feel a little bit bad for all of them, because Andrew was like, he set the bar really high. And he ended up becoming most of their like intern managers eventually. Andrew was really unique when it came to the music, because he was just as much emotionally attached to the music as he was excited about the science behind it. And so he would be very moved when he was recording a string section, playing a beautiful melody, and then he would be equally as stoked about getting out his soldering iron and repairing cables. And he, at one point, his favorite Christmas gift ever, he came in and he said, I got a soldering kit from my mom and dad. It's amazing. And I set up the basement like a work area, and he's like, if we ever have any bad cables, stop throwing them away. I want to take them apart and fix them. And so he started building stuff down there, and building preamps, and that was kind of one of his biggest passions. Actually, the last thing that Andrew listened to on the airplane, he wasn't excited about watching a movie. John and I found a movie, and we were sitting on either side of Andrew, and we both hit play at the same time because we wanted to be like, yeah, that was cool. And Andrew's like, I don't want to watch a movie. I'm just going to listen to music. I'm going to find something. And about 10 minutes into the movie, John and I both hit pause because Andrew's rocking out, and he's just like looking at us like, and whatever he was doing was more exciting than the movie we were listening to. And what did you find? And he goes, I found Bach strings performed on Moog, which is like an electronic keyboard Andrew was obsessed with, vintage keyboard. So he put the headphones on me, and then he put the headphones on John. He said, this is amazing, right? And it just sounded crazy. He loved it. Andrew was so consistent. He and I would meet every morning at 9 a.m., and we'd go over the schedule for the day, and we'd both pour our coffees, and I'd just pour it in like the paper cups, and Andrew always had his Ufta mug. Sit there and get his coffee, Norwegian mug. I'm going to tell you what it means, but we talk about the schedule for the day, and Andrew would get out his phone and just start making notes. And then we'd usually go to the different studios and work, and then come back together throughout the day and work on stuff together. He always gave 110% on anything that he was working on. He was super loyal. You'd never hear him talk bad about anybody. If somebody talked bad about one of his friends, they would get an earful. He didn't like confrontation, but he also was just the kind of guy that would stand up for somebody. He was just so loyal to everybody that he knew. Andrew loved and honored people so well. I saw him do this with other people, but I experienced it firsthand. Every day we were together. After 10 years of working together, you'd expect things to get a little bit lazy relationally, but it wasn't like that for Andrew. He never stopped honoring me with his words and kindness. And I know that he did this with everybody that he loved. He loved traveling the world and recording albums abroad, and we did this several times a year. The only problem with it was that the more live albums we would do, the more vacation time he'd need the following year to go back and visit all the friends that he made on the trip. I didn't mind. I realized early on he was an adventurer, and I knew that he needed to do this to sort of get it out of his system. In the past few years, we'd actually start the year by looking at his schedule and talking about the different adventures that he had planned throughout the year, making sure there were no studio overlaps and blocking out the calendar, making sure I knew where he was going. And it was always fun to see him dream about big things and then go do them with people that he loved. Most people don't know this about Andrew, but he actually quit twice, all in the pursuit of newfound adventures, and quit working at the recording studio. And the first time that he quit, I threw him a big going away party at the studio. I had it fully catered. I had a professional chef there, and we invited several of Andrew's friends. Less than a year later, he called me and he said, "Hey man, I'm coming back. Is my job still available?" I just laughed and I said, "You can always come back, Andrew." And the second time he quit, he asked what day I would be best for me to throw him another catered going away party. And I laughed and I told him that he could have it on any day he wanted. And when he came back to work for me the second time, I said, "You can come back, but you don't get another catered going away party. You're stuck with me now." And he said, "Okay, deal." Andrew invested in himself. Over the past couple years, he began to see things in himself that he wanted to work on. He would make lists, and then he would talk about these things with family and friends, life coaches, mentors, and counselors. He used to tell me that he didn't feel like he would have capacity to understand and know God more with stuff that was going on in his life, and he wanted to make more room. And he wanted to make more room to love his friends and his family. I've never seen anybody invest like that. He's very organized. He had lists on his phone. And he would check off things when he sorted it out. And I saw him really grow the last few years. He had a glow, and I told him that, and I know a lot of people did. But he just put a lot of time in and put the hard work in and got his heart in a place that he had more capacity, which is something that I think we could all learn from. One of Andrew's favorite things in recording was the moments where God collided with his heart in the middle of a song. And we experienced many moments like this together, and it was one of our favorite things about what we did. We'd work in the studio sometimes for weeks and months on songs, and we'd have moments of breakthrough in a song where I would start jumping around the studio, excited, and Andrew would laugh and give me a high five. But then it was in those live worship moments where we look around a room and we feel the presence of God and we see people encountering God in amazing ways. And Andrew always would find me in those moments. If I was with him, he would nudge me. And I'd look at him and he'd be crying and laughing at the same time. And he'd be like, "This is awesome, right?" And I was like, always like hoping nobody would see me cry. So Andrew seen me cry and I'm just like, "Yeah, it's cool, man." And he's just, tears are just streaking down. He's like, "No, but it's amazing." If I wasn't with him, he would text me. He did this just a month ago. We were working on an album in Sacramento. He said, "What the heck is going on?" I said, "I know, right?" And I was out in the room, and I went back into the studio, and Andrew's sitting there just crying, sitting behind the board, just crying. And those are the moments for us. This trip that we took to London was supposed to be like every other trip, another adventure, and this time to the UK. Andrew's family is from Ireland, so working in the UK was a huge milestone and one thing that he and I had been looking forward to and talking about for a long time. We had been to Europe, different countries, but not in the UK yet. And there was one special bonus about this trip too. Dr. John Osborne called us a couple days before our trip and told us he felt like he was supposed to go on this trip with us. He didn't know why he was supposed to go. But he felt like something really big was going to happen. This was totally unexpected, as John had never expressed interest to Andrew and I for joining us on a trip, especially not one at the last minute overseas to Europe. And so Andrew and I were really excited about having John along. And as we started out on the trip, John was so enthusiastic about what he was feeling in his gut. Something big is going to happen, guys. And three of us spent time together talking about God, praying together, and sharing excitement for the days to come. And we had no idea that the big event set before us was Andrew's journey into heaven. As I look back on the events that unfolded on that day, I've become increasingly aware of how beautifully orchestrated they were, as if every detail of Andrew's journey home was woven together like the score of a great movie. Of course, the movie playing in my head had a very different ending. I thought for sure everything that was happening was leading to Andrew suddenly springing up and telling us about his little glimpse into heaven. It was as if the stars were perfectly aligned to give Andrew the very best that earth had to offer, as well as the very best heaven had to offer on earth. Andrew had a doctor with him from the very moment he began to notice that something was wrong with his heart. And John was the only doctor on the plane, and he felt compelled to go on this trip with us just a few days prior. John recognized the problem. He had the pilot make an emergency landing, and he had paramedics waiting for us at the gate at the arrival, all the while bringing Andrew comfort and even sharing a few laughs together on the plane. Andrew even refused a wheelchair to take him off the plane, and John insisted, and Andrew complied. It wasn't until the doors were open and paramedics were entering the plane that Andrew had a cardiac arrest, and he was attended to by paramedics and rushed to the most prestigious heart hospital in all of Europe. And he was operated on by one of the leading heart surgeons in London. In the midst of all this, we had thousands of people around the world praying for Andrew. Friends of Andrew's, as well as pastors from several major church movements, came together to pray for Andrew at the hospital. And as the surgeons were working on Andrew, songs were being sung throughout the halls of the hospital. Songs like Miracles and Break Every Chain, all of which Andrew had a hand in creating years ago. And nobody knew that singing them. They just were singing them. One after another, all of them were songs that Andrew had worked on. The stars were perfectly aligned to give Andrew the very best that earth had to offer, and the very best heaven had to offer on earth. The events of that day were bizarre, so strange, so mysterious. That day has left me with a lot of questions, most of which will not be answered in my lifetime. I'll always wonder why Andrew went so young, and I'll never stop wishing I had a few more good years with him. But if there's one thing I saw on that day, it's that he was loved by so many people, and he was loved so much by God. If there's one thing I can leave you with, and the one thing that was modeled so well by Andrew, is to continue to love each other and keep looking for adventure in life and stay in God's presence and continue to worship in the valley. It was an honor to have spent so much time with Andrew. It was an honor to watch him become a man right in front of my eyes. And it was an honor to be with him when he took his last breath on earth.
One day you'll make everything new, Jesus. One day you will bind every wound. The former things shall all pass away. No more tears. One day you'll make sense of it all, Jesus. One day every question resolved, every anxious thought left behind. No more fear. And when we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout the victory. One day we will see face to face Jesus. Is there a greater vision of grace? And in a moment we shall be changed on that day. And one day we'll be free, free indeed, Jesus. One day all the struggle will cease, and we will see your glory revealed on that day. And when we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout the victory. Yes, when we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. And when we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout the victory. Oh, one day, one day. Yes, one day we will will see face to face. Jesus, is there a greater vision of grace? And in a moment we shall be changed. Yes, in a moment we shall be changed. In a moment we shall be changed. On that day, and when we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout the victory. We'll sing and shout the victory. And we will weep no more. No more tears, no more shame, no more struggle, no more walking through the valley of the shadow, no cancer, no depression, just the brightness of your glory, just the wonder of your grace, everything as it was meant to be. All of this will change. We'll see you face to face. Jesus face to face.
What a beautiful, beautiful song. One day. One day. You know, Andrew's one day happened 3 weeks ago today. For us, one day means there will be no more tears, no more shame, no more mourning, no more grief. We'll be in heaven. And right now, I am sure that Andrew is dialed in with the heavenly band, playing some fabulous instrument, singing his heart out, worshiping God. And we're so happy that he is in a much, much better place. You know, we miss him terribly, but we will see him. And that is the hope that we have. And so we are celebrating Thanksgiving today, celebrating his life, celebrating how good God has been to him, how good God has been to us. You know, I want to thank everybody who came out today on St. Patrick's Day. St. Patrick's Day. This would be the day Andrew would love to be here celebrating with us. You know, 18 years ago, as an 11-year-old boy, Andrew and his family stood on the streets of Dublin, Ireland, watching the St. Patrick's Day parade. And we've always enjoyed St. Patrick's Day. And you know, Andrew was never much of a cook, but he had one dish he had perfected. And he would invite friends over, and he'd fix this dish, and he never invited me over, but he had many friends over, and he would cook them corned beef and cabbage with potatoes and white sauce, and that was his favorite dish. But St. Patrick's Day is a great day. And we'll have a little celebration, some snacks, I think some St. Patrick's Day cookies, maybe refreshments. But there's a couple linen wall hangings that hung in our home for years. And Andrew one day stole those linen wall hangings and took them to his apartment. So one day I stole them back. And then another time he stole them again, and I stole them back. And I learned from his sister he had plans currently to steal them. But he wasn't here to steal them. But they're hanging back there. You'll see them. It has the Irish blessing that Andrew loves so much. But it's challenging when you lose someone that you love. And sleep is very difficult. I wake up in the middle of the night and I can't go back to sleep and my mind just runs through things. So I got up and one night I'm sitting in the chair, 3 a.m, reading tributes to Andrew on Facebook with tears rolling down my face. not knowing the impact he had with other people. And it's so beautiful because many people he touched, he made himself vulnerable, they did the same, and they were just beautiful tributes. One night I got up and sleep, so I wrote a poem to Andrew. I'd like to read that to you. It's entitled, "You Are Not Here, But I See You Everywhere." I close my eyes, yet cannot sleep. It's elusive as can be. Your face is pictured in my mind and burned into my memory. I hear some laughter in a crowd and quickly take a look, but 'tis not you I thought I heard. Their laughter I mistook. I hear a band and think of you. I strain to hear the bass. Your love of music touched our lives and cheers our tear-stained face. I miss our weekly lunches out as father with his son, and now I'll have to wait a while until my time here is done. I daily see your fingerprints in many earthly things, but up above you raise your voice and praise the King of Kings. You are not here to share our pain, nor feel our deep sense of loss. You're risen to be with Christ above through his victory on the cross. Andrew touched our lives with love. He always seemed to care. Though Andrew is not here in flesh, we see him everywhere. You know, after he passed away, and he has the big project he was working on in London, and I really sensed, you know, Cheryl and I, we want to go to London and to be part of, in our own small way, that last project he worked on. We wanted to go and just, the King's Cross Church was doing a worship evening and in a beautiful historic theater, the Scala in London. And we just wanted to go and observe and watch and worship, to be part of the memory he would have made and to honor Jeremy. Let me speak for a minute about Jeremy. You know, most people like their work. Some of us really are fortunate to love our work. Andrew loved his job. He loved music, and he loved his boss. I don't know anybody on earth I've ever met that loved his boss more than Andrew loved his boss. And I thank God that Andrew had a job he loved. We serve an amazing God who knows us intimately. I mean, this God we serve, this is the God that Andrew served. We know that God knew us before we were born. He knows the number of hairs on our head. Our days are numbered. And so when Andrew's life passed away, it wasn't an untimely death, premature. It was the perfect day that God took him home. And we thank God for his perfect plan. We don't understand these things. They grieve us. But this was God's plan. But in this concert hall in London, Cheryl and I were there, and his brother Alexander was able to join us. We were amazed. We saw the worship team singing, and then the Reverend Pete Hughes stood up and gave a beautiful memorial to Andrew, who wasn't with us. And then Dr. John Osborne stood up and gave a nice tribute. And then a song was performed. A song was sang by the worship group. And it's called With Me, David's song. And this song was written by Lydia, who lost her brother 2 years prior, Lydia and Rich Dicast. They wrote this song, and they performed it that night. It was a beautiful song. I looked down from the balcony, and they sang this song, and there was a sea of worshipers singing softly this music. It was it was like you were in heaven listening to this beautiful music, and our hearts were touched, and tears are rolling down our face. And we were worshiping God with those folks in England, and it was tremendous. And I want to read to you the lyrics today of With Me, David's song, after which Jonathan Berlin, I believe, has come in from Florida to sing this song. This song is a powerful song. Its lyrics are beautiful. I listen to it every day. Every day, it touches my heart, and I want to share it with you here. When I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, and the grief that I carry is pounding on my chest, I know, Jesus, you are with me. When sorrow has surrounded and I cannot understand, I reach out in the doubting and hold onto your hand. I know, Jesus, you are with me. You are my shelter. You are my stronghold. Why should I be afraid? All through the struggle, you are my refuge. I hide in the depths of your grace. I feel hope rise within me and a joy I can't explain. I'm building up the courage to trust in you again. I know, Jesus, you are with me. Though sorrow has surrounded, I won't let it crush my faith. I'll take my disappointments and turn them into praise. I sing, Jesus, you are worthy. And the chorus says, I'm not going to wait for you to make all things new. Right here, right now, I lift up my praise. I will dance in the land of the living. I will shout and never stop singing. You are good, and your love endures forever. And the last verse reads, I feel hope rise within me and a joy I can't explain. You've given me the courage to trust in you again. I know, Jesus, you are with me.
I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. When I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, when sorrow surrounds me and I cannot understand, I know, Jesus, you're with me. When the sorrow surrounds me and I cannot understand, I reach out into the doubting. I know, Jesus, you're with me. My shelter, you are my stronghold. Why should I be afraid? And all through the struggle, you are my refuge. Hide in the depth of your grace. I feel hope rise within me and a joy I can't explain. Say it again. I feel hope rise within me and a joy I can't explain. Now I'm building up the courage to trust in you again. I know, Jesus, you're with me when darkness surrounds me and I cannot understand. I know, Jesus, you're with me. You are my shelter. You are my stronghold. How can I be afraid? And all through struggle. You are my refuge. I hide in the light of your grace, and I'm not gonna wait for you to make all things new. Right here, right now, I'll lift up my praise, and I'm not gonna wait for you to make all things new. And right here, right now, I'll lift up my praise. Now we'll dance in the land of the living. I will shout, and I'll never stop singing. You are good, and your love endures forever. I will dance in the land of the living. I will shout, and I'll never stop singing. You are good, and your love endures forever. Forever. I feel hope rise within me, and a joy I can't explain. You've given me the courage to trust in you again. I know, Jesus, you are with me. When I don't understand, I'll choose you. When I don't understand, I'll choose you, God. When I don't understand, I'll choose to love you, God. When I don't understand, I'll choose you. When I don't understand, I'll choose you, God. When I don't understand, I'll choose to love you, God. Oh, when I don't understand, I'll choose you. When I don't understand, I'll choose you, God. When I don't understand, I'll choose to love you, God. to sing your song again. Whatever may pass and whatever lies before me, let me be singing when the evening comes. Bless the Lord, oh my soul. your holy name. 'Cause you're rich in love and you're slow to anger. Your name is great and your heart is kind. For all your goodness I will keep on singing. 10,000 reasons for my heart to find. To bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. I worship Your holy name. Sing again, bless the Lord, bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. I worship Your holy name. And on that day when my strength is failing, the end draws near and my time has come. Still my soul will sing Your praise unending. 10,000 years and forevermore. Bless the Lord, oh my soul. Come on, sing it out. Oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before. Oh my soul. I worship Your holy name. Bless the Lord, oh my soul. Oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before. Oh my soul. I worship Your holy name. God, we worship Your holy name. God, we worship Your holy name.
We turn our eyes on You. All else fades away, Jesus. You give life. You are love. You bring light to the darkness. You give hope. You restore every heart that is broken. is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath, and it's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise, pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise, we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise, pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you, only Lord. Great are you, Lord. We pour it out to you, all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth will shout your praise, Lord. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. Sing it out. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. 'Cause it's your breath, it's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise, we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise, we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise, we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. 'Cause great are you, Lord. Great are you in every season. Great are you, Lord, in every valley, on every mountain. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise, pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise, we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise, pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. when sorrows like sea billows roll. Whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well, it is well with my soul. It is well, with my soul, with my soul. It is well, it is well with my soul.
Amen. As we were worshiping, I could not picture Andrew on the bass waving his hair and stomping his foot. Because when Andrew would begin to stomp his foot and wave his hair, you knew revival was about to break out. We miss him so much. And I just want to share just a final thought here. I know some of you are thinking, oh no, now I have to listen to a preacher in skinny jeans. So I'll keep this brief, but I'm honored to be able to close our time together. I'm so moved by the life of David. And Andrew was much like David. He loved worship, he loved excellence, he loved music, he loved the presence of God, and he gave his life to release the sound of heaven on the earth. And there's this moment in David's life where his son is dying, and he's pleading with God for 7 days. It said that David pleaded with God. He cried out to God for God to spare the life of his son. And as he did, it said that he would lay on the ground night after night, crying out to God. His friends, they encouraged him to eat. He would not eat. They encouraged him to get up, and he would not get up. He stayed in the presence of God for a week, crying out for God to bring his son back to life. And then in this moment when David realized that his son had died, it said that David got up, he changed his clothes, he washed, and he went back into the presence of God and he worshiped God. And David had this beautiful way, a man after God's own heart, finding God in the pain. And you can read all of his songs and his psalms to know that he found God on his worst day and on his best day. And that the Bible says God draws near to the brokenhearted. He draws near to those crushed in spirit, that blessed are those who mourn, they shall be comforted. That when we grieve with God, pain becomes such a pathway to his presence. And pain's always an invitation, not that God has abandoned us, but that God's inviting us near. And then David, he says something so profound to his friends. They are amazed that he would worship God after his son died. And they asked him about this, and David said this. He said, while I was contending for my son's life, I worshiped God. I sought the Lord. And after my son died, I sought him still. And what David was saying, he was saying, while my son was fighting for breath, while he was fighting for his life, I sought after God for what I knew he could do. But once I knew my son had died, I sought God just for who he is. And then he says this statement. It's one of the most profound statements that side of the cross and the resurrection. What David said in this moment, he said, I can't bring my son back to me, but I can go to him. And David had a beautiful way of gazing into eternity. He saw something no one in his day saw. He knew, I can't bring him back, I can't change this, but I can go to him because he saw into eternity. And had this beautiful way of knowing, I can't change things, but I can go to him. And there's this tension that every one of us feels in death. And the tension is this: death was never God's plan. Failed hearts, it was never in the plan of God. God designed us to live forever. And so we were robbed a friend and a son and a brother. And yet we know that when Jesus rose from the dead, that he broke the power of death. So whatever power death had, it doesn't. And this is why Jesus can say, I'm the resurrection and the life. And if anyone is in me and believes in me, even though they die, they never die. And this is why in Acts, they're running around shouting about Jesus. And they're saying things like, death could not hold him in its grip. That Jesus killed death. And that we are in him and he's in us. And so death could not hold Andrew in its grip. And so we mourn the loss, but we celebrate his life because we know that Andrew's more alive now than he's ever been. And this is why Paul can say, we don't grieve as those without hope. We grieve with the hope of heaven. And every time that we mourn and we grieve in God, it actually becomes an act of worship. And the pain draws us into an encounter with the presence of God. And we know that Andrew's with Jesus, but that's not even the great promise. The great promise is resurrection. That the promise, and what that means, it actually means new body. That God will raise Andrew from the dead. That's the hope. That what God did for Jesus, he will do for Andrew. That's why we can sing songs like, our hearts will sing, and these bones will sing, because we actually believe that God will raise the dead back to life. And that this isn't just we get to go to heaven someday, but heaven's actually coming here someday. That's the promise of resurrection. And we miss Andrew. I miss him so much as a friend, as a pastor and leader. He was everything you would dream of. A servant, an encourager, and just the last time I saw Andrew, he was with Jenna. He was glowing, and I'm sure it was because he was with Jenna. But he looked so whole and so ready to meet Jesus. And so I want us to pray right now, because this moment, it becomes one of Andrew's last gifts to us. That we've heard stories and we've worshiped, we've praised God in the pain and worshiped him in the wonder. And this moment becomes a moment where we can experience everything Andrew gave his life for. To see people encounter the presence of God. And so I want to pray right now, if you guys would put your hands out. And I'm going to pray a blessing over us today. As those who grieve with the hope of heaven, that we would see Jesus the way Andrew saw Jesus. And that we would encounter his presence. And so I bless you as family and friends and siblings of Andrew. We bless you as ones who know his presence. We bless you today to see God. We bless you as those who grieve with the hope of heaven, that death has been conquered, that Jesus Christ broke the power of death, that those who are in him, even though they die, they never die, because we see death the way God sees death. And we just say, Holy Spirit, would you come and would you comfort? And God, we get up off the ground and we worship you. Not just for what you can do, but for who you are. We pray this in your powerful name, Jesus. Amen. Amen. Bless you. We want to invite you in a moment to a time of just spending time together in the front room. We've got some refreshments. And for those that traveled and came a long ways to be here, thank you on behalf of the family for joining us. And we just ask that you guys would remain seated just for a moment until we're able to escort the family into the place that we'll be in a moment. So, all right, bless you.